Dear all, good afternoon. My name is Oladele Ayorinde. I'm happy to welcome you to Mountaintop University, the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. Today, we are advancing on our initial conversation and dialogue. We've been having series of dialogue and conversation, particularly since late last year, called the AI Music Dialogue. Today, we are advancing on that particular trajectory, but in so doing, we have with us today one of the long-standing voices, we can say pioneer of the notion of AI in our country today. Our guest today is a scholar. He's popular within the music industry, the film industry, and he has contributed a lot to both academia, professional world, the cultural industry, and also the technological, industry and dialogue conversation, not only in Nigeria, Africa, but also in the UK, Europe, and across America. So I am happy to welcome today Dr. Tunde Adegbola.
You are welcome, sir. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir. Kindly introduce yourself to our friends and guests and those who are joining us online. So.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Tunde Adegbola. I'm basically a research scientist, sometimes a consulting engineer, and I do a lot of culture activism. I work in the area of human language technology as a day job, with a research interest at the intersection of information science, information theories, telecommunications, and linguistics, looking specially at some of the special features of African languages, the feature of tonality, which brings about the very, very interesting phenomenon of speech surrogacy, within which we are able to speak the language with drums, flutes, or any musical instrument that is capable of producing three distinct tones. I work as executive director of African Languages Technology Initiative, leading a team of researchers from a wide range of scholarly backgrounds to make computers usable in African languages.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. You are welcome, sir. Again, we are happy and I'm excited, to have Dr. Tunde Adegbola today with us. And guess what? The interesting thing today, and particularly in the context of today's conversation, is that this is a first dialogue with him. So we are having him today and next week. So hopefully it's definitely, or we might say, going to be an impactful one. As you've just heard from him, is quite rooted in this conversation. And for those joining us today for the first time, our idea of AI music dialogue is centered on three important layers. The first is the role of digital technology in our society today. As you know, the concept of technology, particularly what we can call the elephant in the room, AI, artificial intelligence, is now a global phenomenon. It's been around for a while, but one of the first questions we want to explore, or layers we want to really focus on today, is what is AI for an African, or what is AI in the Nigerian context? Then the second is, how is AI, necessitating some ideas or affecting, influencing our everyday life. Then the third is, what is the role of AI in promoting sustainable culture? In other words, I mean, how is AI, influencing our everyday life? Language, issues around language, issues around culture, issues around identity. So these are the issues we are going to explore today. But originally, the dialogue itself is emerged from what we call organ house, concert, and seminar series, which is a space, I can say a free space of dialogue, of experimentation, of artistic exploration that brings together, professional scholars from across board, both within Nigeria, Africa, and across the world, to explore the intersection of artistic work, research, professional practice, the industries, and also knowledge production that is rooted in the local context but relevant globally. So to come back to the context of today, with Dr. Tunde Adegbola, we are exploring ways in which digital technology can function or help in sustaining or promoting Nigerian arts and culture. The same is also useful, true for African culture, particularly in 21st century Africa. So again, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate your presence here, and we are looking forward to the insights, both from you today and also for next week. So let's quickly move into the conversation directly without wasting much time. So I think the first question I would like to ask you then is, what is this phenomenon called AI, and what is its relevance today?
Well, artificial intelligence, I'm a reductionist, so artificial intelligence. So we can look at artificial. What is artificial? Artificial is that which comes from human efforts. The art in it implies human creativity. Definitely. Not natural. The kind of things that produce artifacts, such that when you see artifacts, you say, a human being has passed here. When you see natural things, well, these are natural. But when you see certain things formed in certain ways, you say, a human being has passed here.
Definitely.
So, because you have seen an artifact created by a human being. So artificial is anything that is made by human hands, human understanding, human dexterity. Now, intelligence is a more difficult phenomenon to define. Each time somebody comes up with a definition for intelligence, there's always an exception. Somebody says, what about this? Well, that's true. I can agree with you. I have not covered that. And when you try to cover that, you leave something else open.
Definitely.
So, and it remains that difficult, almost nebulous phenomenon to define. But that has not stopped scientists, computer scientists, cognitive scientists, stop them from developing this idea of artificial intelligence. Because even though we were not able to define intelligence, we are able to identify intelligent behavior. When somebody does something, say, wow, that was intelligent. We cannot really say this is what makes it happen, but we know that thing that has happened exhibits intelligent behavior. So basically, artificial intelligence is the use of machines, particularly computers, to bring about intelligent behavior. But it's a bit difficult to speak about artificial intelligence in a vacuum, because what brought about artificial intelligence as we know it now is the development of digital technology, which you have made references to severally. When we talk about digital technology, we need to take one or two steps back to look at what existed before digital technology, which is analog technology. You see, the idea of analogy, in which something that we understand is related to something we don't have total understanding about, such that we can use our knowledge of that which we understand to penetrate that which we do not understand, is pervasive.
Wow.
It's all over the world. All cultures take account of it. I mean, if you give my screen, you see, I have here on the screen some explanation from the Yoruba perspective. The fact that most of what we understand comes from the perspective of analogies. And that is, analogy basically is a comparison between two things for the purpose of using the one that we understand to get insight into the one that we don't understand. There's a Yoruba statement, "Ohun tó bá jọra la fi ń wéra." You can only compare things that bear resemblance. If things bear resemblance, then there's basis to compare them. And in Yoruba understanding, Yoruba thought, what may translate approximately to English as proverbs, wellerisms, and such ideas, in Yoruba is described as owe. Owe. Actually, owe is a kind of contraction of owe. That is that with which we compare it, or that with which we wrap it.
Wow.
So, owe, proverbs, aphorisms are statements which we understand because they are common in our experience, but they are so analogical to some things we don't understand, such that we are able to use that which we understand to get insights into one we don't understand. That is the whole concept of owe. Way is to either wrap or compare. Another idea that the Yoruba use to express analogy is alo. Law is to ply, to twine, to convolve, to twist, to make one thing conform to the other. And in the same way, the concept of alo is another basic idea about analogies in Yoruba. Between owe and alo, there's another Yoruba concept of itan. Yeah. Which most people will say, look at stories. But no, when you look at the word itan, it derives from the word ton, which first of all means to spread the things out so that we can see through it.
Definitely.
To illuminate, to reflect, to radiate. These are the ideas around ton, from which itan is derived. And you find that most proverbs derive from itan, from stories that happened in the past. And alo, tales, and riddles are designed out of things that have happened
in the past.
So, and that is why the three ideas of owe, alo, and itan in Yoruba are not expressed merely as spoken. You don't say owe.
Yeah.
You don't say alo. Even though modern Yoruba people don't say itan. No, it is pa. The three of them are pa owe, pa alo, pa itan. And part there is to break open, to decode, to make apparent.
Wow.
So that is the fundamental principle of analogy, which pervades all human societies, all human cultures. And when you take full advantage of the benefit of at least one more cultural reality, then you start to see these things as very, very apparent.
Wow.
So you find that most of human understanding is based on analogy. But sometime if you look at my screen, you see a pair of boots, which I said once upon a time. Now, when you start using that pair of boots, this is what it becomes.
Yeah.
So, and it came to pass.
Came to pass. Okay.
So when you look at the two, you ask the question, which is worth more? Most people will say, okay, the one A is worth more than B. Because the value has been made analogous to its state. The value of the boot is made analogous to its state. But if I told you that boot B was the boot that Mandela wore on Robben Island, the value changes. So the value is now analogous to the stature
a particular
of the person
event
that wore the boot. But when we look further, now look at this. A and B on the left.
Okay.
A and B on the right. Which is more valuable? This scruffy 1,000 naira note compared to the relatively more neater 10 naira note. Of course, the average person will choose the 1,000 naira note because the value is not analogous to the state of the note. The value is based on the digits written on it.
Yeah.
So there we come with digital
Okay.
representation of it. So this is what we've been dealing with. So all along, humans have found this very, very captivating value in creating analogies between phenomena.
Wow.
And they are able to understand phenomena that way. But when you do analogy, there are problems with analogy.
Definitely.
Analog representations, the further they are away from the original, they tend to lose value. When you, in the days of analog audio, when you take a cassette, an audio cassette, you record from it, and you record from the recorded, and you record, then you suffer a generation loss.
Yeah.
The quality continues to drop. These are some of the intrinsic problems with analog. But if it's digital, no matter how much you reproduce it, the value still remains the same. So that is why we are now in the digital age, and it brings a lot of advantages of convergence, this lack of generation loss, lack of attenuation. And so that is what is digital.
Wow.
And it becomes so important that we now live more in the digital world, which gives us all these advantages. And all what we are now doing with AI is built upon this thing about digital technology.
Wow.
I mean, talking about AI, I said AI is an effort to reproduce human intelligent behavior. In reproducing human intelligent behavior, one of the main problems that humans try to solve, is the problem of knowing.
Definitely.
We need to know, because to make decisions and take actions, you need information.
Definitely.
The question now is, how do you get the information?
Then I'm going to interrupt you
Please.
briefly now. So I want to kindly help us back to the initial slide, the allo, the three parts are quite important.
Yes.
I know we've moved into the digital, but I'm interested in that particular section and the concept of pa on the one hand, pa lo, pa owe, pa iton. Then this is quite interesting. It's because in semiotics, for those who study language, the idea, what you are explaining, is similar to what the scholars in linguistics, particularly those from the sociological perspective or anthropology, as explained as semiotics analysis. Particularly, Clifford Guest, who is one of the renowned social anthropologists, explained the concept of semiotic approach to cultural understanding on the one hand, which is the idea of ba, that is breaking a whole society down.
Revealing.
Yeah, revealing.
Unearthing.
Yeah.
Decoding.
Yeah, through a particular event, breaking it down. Then also, the idea of decoding language, we can call reduction of a sort. But the reduction itself, the way you explain it in the Yoruba context, does not necessarily take away the relevance of the whole. But in the Yoruba context now, can we take it that the idea of pa, we can go back into what we call ethno-theory or understanding of technology or use or function of technology. So to pa then means that we are drawing on a form of technology to travel back in time. Because according to explanation, when we pa away is more like what we call theory today in social sciences. Is a will of the society. We draw on a way to explain particular phenomenon, social event, like we have in social sciences. So does Owe, Iton, and Alo, can we call them a form of technology, local technology in the Yoruba context?
Well, anything that employs natural principles to make life easier for human beings is a technology. That's the definition of technology. Technology is the application of natural principles to make life easier for people. Owe, Alo, Iton, fundamentally are tools. And what tool is not a technology? They are tools used to achieve certain ideational objectives. There's something you don't understand, you bring about, and the Yoruba statement, Welerism, that proverbs are like horses to thought. Tí ọ̀rọ̀ bá sọnù, òwe la fi ń wá. When a thinker is lost in thought, proverbs can be used to find your way.
Then it's a technology then?
Of course, yes. I've said that. It's a tool, it's a technology, it's a...
Wow, this is quite interesting. Our friends, I'm sure you are following this pattern. Then, particularly for scholars or those in the social sciences particularly, I think we are not just unraveling contemporary ideas of technology or AI. What is going on right now is also trying to travel back in time to decode some of the things that we take for granted, or when we explain phenomena like technology. We tend to think of these tools within a particular context, which in most cases is a Western or European idea of technology, particularly tools to do this, which is good. But what Dr. Adegbola is also opening to us today is that we also have technologies, and we have been using technology even within our own indigenous context. And the linguistic references is quite apt in the sense that they also, they are pulling us back into those things that we often neglect. Let's see how we want to further unravel, or where we are traveling to, or where this is taking us to. So thank you so much. One other question that I think the next question to say is that then the question after unraveling what is AI or digital technology, which is quite deep, but the question then is, how does digital technology promote sustainable, arts and culture? The idea of promote and sustainable is quite important here because, like there is a popular understanding or what we have going through right now in current time about ways in which technology has been assimilated in particular ways in which it does not only threaten local condition but also eroding what we call local values. Let's look at social media, for instance. The youths of nowadays can go on social media and do things that on a normal day are not normative within their own cultural, within community. I'm sure you know most of issues around sexuality, issues around, even abusing, ideas like issues of medicine, for instance. I'm talking about drug addiction, also, making this available and making it a public sphere, So these are one of many examples that we have that we experience on a daily basis. Then the question is, how does digital technology, promote, or how can we use it to promote and sustain arts and culture?
Well, fundamentally, art and culture are phenomena that depend on media. Every art form, every cultural expression is transferred, is presented, is managed within some form of media. Now, digital technology also is fundamentally a media-based technology. And what digital technology is doing or has done and needs to be very consciously realized and promoted is that digital technology has brought about a kind of equating knowledge as propagated in literature and knowledge as propagated in orature. Because the power of literature came from the capacity to carry it far beyond where the person that originated the thought can go. The fact that there's a form of permanence when you put something into writing, it stays. The fact that before you write something, you think about it properly, so there's a kind of a level of precision in things that you have written. So these are the main advantages that literature had over orature. That put literature in such a state that made orature look as though inferior. But we forget that with the best of the efforts in literature, with what do you call them? These various marks that you use to give context to literature, exclamation marks, full stop, comma, and all that. Even today, with all the those funny faces you put around writing, it's emojis. It's because some of the important elements of communication, the body language, gestures, the facial expression, the gestures, look at the movement of my hands and all that, do not accompany writing. But digital technology has now made it possible for you to put your speech in a form that it can go far beyond
Definitely.
the issue of permanence. As I'm speaking now, if they are wearing these digital devices around me, what I have been saying will just be fizzling into air, and only people who had it when I said it can use it. I call it linguistic gas flaring. You know, like we flare gas in the chemical industries to just get rid of them. But digital technology has now come to bring about permanence to orature, bring about precision to orature, bring about propagation to orature, so that orature can now travel as far as literature. And to speak, you do not need to go to school. All you need is to be part of a speaking community.
Wow.
But to write, you have to be taught deliberately.
Definitely.
Saying that even though the facilities for language are innate to human beings, but there's a need for extra effort to write.
Definitely.
So the so-called illiterate, or probably better referred to as non-literate, do not get disadvantaged with some of the media that digital technology has brought to the table.
Wow.
So we have now come into, as it were, a second age of orature. With, first of all, multimedia, and secondly, and more importantly, speech technologies with which you can speak to a computer, and the computer turns what you've said into writing. You can present written materials to a computer, and the computer turns what you have written into spoken language. So that if you send a text message to your grandmother at home and you are saying, please beware of Mama so and so, her Iyale, and it is the daughter of Mama so and so, she called to come and read the thing. So now you have your phone that can actually read the thing to her. So these are some of the things that this is the advantages of digital technology. But the unfortunate thing is, particularly for us in Africa, we believe that these technologies should be used only the way they are used abroad. No, every culture must, every user of technology must take an insurance cover against technological alienation. Because when you use technology for things that your culture does not demand of you, then you start seeing some kind of alienation from your realities, from your environment, because you are trying to use technology. So
can you provide some example for that cultural alienation, more like a sample of something like that in today's world, perhaps, just to dig deeper into that concept?
Well, you see, we have so imbibed foreign cultures, and we have accepted globalization or globalism to the extent that things that are done in some parts of the world for specific reasons, we accept them. I take, for example, the basic design of the clothing we wear in Africa. You see the element of cross ventilation built into it, like the agbada. No, the air can move from one side to the other because we live in the tropics. If it is really hot, you can fold the agbada both sides and there's more air flowing. If it's getting cold, you draw it down and you wrap it around yourself. These are clear designs to make us align with the environment. So if, for example, we now take on other modes of dressings that were meant to address some other situations that do not exist in our own circumstances, then we are beginning to be culturally alienated. And when we get ourselves into that kind of situation, we probably will need to put an air conditioner to become comfortable again. So you see that kind of, yeah.
Does that mean that because by default, I think air conditioner are not part of our local infrastructure in terms of facility. So the challenge or the kind of infrastructure that furnishes or promotes or sustain technology somewhere where we imported the technology from, particularly the clothing we wear. So we then
even the technology of building our houses.
So when we import the technology, we are also indirectly importing the problem.
Yeah.
It's solving somewhere down.
Yes. Yeah, then we now bring, we bring the problem, and then we now bring the technology that they used to solve the problem, where the technology came from. And for me, is the fallacy of technology transfer. I live in an estate where people behave as though having trees around your house is the symbol of being in the bush.
Wow.
So very few people have trees. I have trees in my house, around my house. And you now see taxi drivers driving past and parking under my tree to take a shade. You see Okada riders, they park the Okada and lie on the Okada driver, on the Okada, to take a nap under the shade. And then the houses, the way we build our houses, I mean, our forebears did not need air conditioning, and I don't think it is that we are less conformant to heat, but just that our forebears had found the right technology to live comfortably in our environment.
And that's what I was referencing the other time. That okay. So the question then, particularly from this concept we are addressing now. So then the question would then be that the initial infrastructure created by our forebears, how then do we, perhaps, if possible, bring them back and develop on the initial technology that came with those, long-standing culture. For you made reference to ideas of ventilation, even clothing. So, are these possible, still possible, in relation to the concept of AI and technology today?
Oh, definitely. I don't want to give into cliches, but it becomes difficult for me not to present the concept of decolonization.
Okay.
Because a lot of these ideas were suggested to us. They were suggested and sold to us, and they were promoted as superior to what we had. And by the time somebody names his or her child Ifatoyinbo, there's a great inferiority complex involved.
Okay.
Because what the person is saying is that, these Oyimbos have brought wonders. And we too have. And our own too is, if it doesn't surpass, it's at par.
It's comparable.
Whereas, there are situations in which ours is far ahead.
Decolonization, okay.
Only recently I was interviewed by a young man, and I was explaining to him that the Yoruba had perfected the technology of inoculation through the knowledge system of the Shopono cult. By the time Europeans were still bloodletting, they cut themselves and leak out bad blood to get healed. But we, knowing that Ekpe, Lafi Wekpe, take scab from somebody who is infected with smallpox, attenuate it with some herbs, and make bere, and introduce that thing into the bloodstream. And that was how an African slave by the name of Onesimus saved Boston from smallpox in 1720 something, 1726 thereabouts.
Wow. Okay.
So, first thing is to accept that we are inferior to nobody. And then we start engaging our environment with the intelligence God has given us. Part of the problem we have is that we are having to undertake this discussion even in English.
Yeah.
We were taught technology in English. We were taught all sorts of things in English. Little wonder then that when we encounter a technological wonder, the normal reaction is, Oyinbo.
Yes.
Whereas it's not Oyinbo, it's Imo, which is available to anybody. So, the important thing is that we get over the idea that ours is inferior to anyone else's, and then start to engage our environment and put up buildings that suit our environment, not necessarily buildings that look like the one we really liked when we went to England.
Wow. Well, I think there's a lot here that we need to take time to quickly flesh out or unpack. Then, does that mean that we need to start reconsidering the ways we adapt culture? I'm using culture carefully right now, particularly the reference point buildings, clothing, even food, and the ways in which we engage these materials, the way we eat. I'm sure it's a common knowledge now that if you want to be civil in Nigeria or in a corporate, you need to, there's a way you handle
like
it.
Joneses.
Yeah, there's a way you must do it. You must put this here, put that here. Yeah. Then the question then is, does that mean that we need to throw all these things away totally, or are there ways we can mediate in between?
Culture is dynamic. Culture and culture, no person, no people know it all. You will get information, you will get ideas, you will get enlightenment from other cultures, and you will mix and take what is good from one culture and imbibe in the other. And I dare say that the Yoruba understand this so acutely that we say, that what you may consider as so appropriate at the present may not be appropriate in the future. So there's a need to be dynamic, to adjust. And you see, the adjustment is needed. But what is disturbing the adjustment is this seeming conviction that we have nothing to offer, that what we have is inferior to what other people have, particularly in the academics. The explanation I gave about analogy as a universal way of getting to understand phenomena. We somehow don't sit to make such inquiries and imbibe such principles. We think we have been taught and we have been encouraged by the ratio of offshore papers we need to write and all that to refer to theories that come from elsewhere.
Definitely.
Which may be appropriate sometimes, but may be inappropriate sometimes. So in our journey of decolonization, we must first of all realize that there is enough
On ground.
on ground. There is enough on our own system to fall back upon. When I was undertaking my PhD studies many years ago, I was working in the area of speech recognition to be able to convert Yoruba speech to writing automatically by a computer. The first thing that came to my mind is that I shouldn't do it the way it's done for English. Why? Because it is not possible to speak English with a drum, whereas it's possible to speak Yoruba with a drum. And when I go to a party and a drummer knows me and he starts saying dan 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 dan, I say, Oladele or Adegbola, oh, let's leave man, leave me alone. And my boyfriend say, who is living on? Say the musician, did he talk? He said, can't you hear him calling me? So my thesis, my PhD thesis, was that because it is possible for a drum to speak Yoruba, there is enough information in the tone to recognize a Yoruba statement, discarding the consonants and the vowels.
Wow.
I proved it mathematically.
Wow.
I demonstrated it essentially, and I demonstrated that it is a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient to ignore the consonants and the vowels and just change the tones of Yoruba if you want to recognize Yoruba. Now, because computer technology comes from the Western world and the concept of speech recognition is introduced to the world, probably English was the first language in which speech recognition was implemented. I have young scholars all over the world who pride themselves in, yes, we've done it too. We've managed to recognize speech. And I asked them, did you discard the consonants and vowels like Ayon do? And they say, but this is the way people do it. I said, no. This is the way it is done for English. Your language is different. There are some advantages in your language which, if you take, you will be able to get more efficient results. I mean, it is a fact. It is a technological fact that if we make telephones take account of the fact that you can understand Yoruba, throwing away the consonants and the vowels, we can make cheaper telephone calls. Because the consonants and the vowels occupy bandwidth, which we can avoid using if the telephone had not been made to give advantage to the English language and other languages that are not tonal. So these are the kind of things we need to engage vigorously and actively and stop being feeble copies of the Western world.
Wow. Thank you. I think, another layer to just your explanation right now is I like the fact that you reference the talking drum, which is quite germane to the Yoruba, sonic on the one hand and the linguistic, palette, or we can say the Yoruba cosmology, for instance, the way Yoruba reason, think, and everything. And I'm happy also because we have, on this series, we've been engaging issues around composition. Particularly also the ideas of decoloniality, decolonization, how composers now need to go back to the archive, go back to the culture, go back to, initial works in this area. I'm sure you know about Akinoba's research and also some of his mentees and prodigies like the Ayorinde of today, and many works also like the Owadele, and who are also working in that area in different ways, trying to advance this phenomenon. It's important because this is quite important for music studies. Yeah, not only in Nigeria, but also within the global context of music scholarship or Africa. This conversation of decoloniality is becoming a cliche on the one hand because ideas are being reproduced, but only few or some scholars are yet to agree with the fact that, for instance, as you mentioned, the composition or music aesthetics can also inform other technology within culture, Or let's use composition as a reference, that you can generate theories, theories, ideas from that idea alone. The same way we can also move to Zimbabwe, Mbira Zimo. We can also do the same thing for Shona language or Ndebele language in Zimbabwe. Or we can move to a place also in the east, in the Eastern Africa, the Baganda culture, the Uganda, their Akadinda xylophone or Amadinda. So these are all layers of reference across Africa that function in the same way with talking drum within the Yoruba context. Then the question is, from your point perspective, people have tried this, but the work that has been done are yet to be annexed the way they should be, because of the same reason that people are often looking towards the West, even in trying to sustain or promote their own local culture. And a case in point is what we are discussing today. Let's use Yoruba culture, particularly I'm happy that you are drawing references from the Yoruba culture. The same thing can be said for Igbo, Hausa, Fulani, Efik, Ibibio, other languages. The question then is, where is the African archive? When I mean archive, I'm talking about the culture of the people, what defines them, So how do we go about this with this idea of technology and artificial intelligence at the center of this going back, looking inward?
You are touching on a very, very important, even if sore point, because artificial intelligence depends very, very vitally on data, on availability of data. Unfortunately, the domains within which we use our languages, express our culture, do not make for footprints on the internet. Whereas, as a human language technologist, if I want to do analysis in English, for example, I go onto the internet, I have easy access to 100 years worth of daily publications of the New York Times, London Times, International Herald Tribune, even Daily Times of Nigeria.
Wow.
You can have many years of
Access.
English sentences.
Sentences.
The most frequent Yoruba newspaper is Alaroye. It is published once a week. It used to make its materials available on the internet. It doesn't anymore. So, to train the computer, because part of what has really changed that's made artificial intelligence popular now is because we finally found how to make computers learn. Machine learning.
Machine learning.
And machines learn from data.
From data.
And if the data is not there, there's nothing for the machine to learn. So, and in our culture, we live in such a way that we do not accumulate data for the machine to learn from. Anybody that's involved in doing machine learning work in African languages, probably apart from some South African languages, will have to, first of all, go and raise funding to deliberately and singularly gather data to use. And it can be nothing near to the data that accumulates as a byproduct of press organizations trying to inform the public. The objective of those newspapers is not to create data. It is to inform, or probably to always educate and sometimes to entertain. But as a byproduct of these objectives, there's accumulation of data, which can now be used to train computers. In our own case, no. So first and foremost, we must, even if we have to employ government policy and regulatory conditions to make it happen, we must ensure that as much as possible of our thoughts, our daily conversations, our interactions that can be documented, get documented. And where to start from is in radio stations, television stations, where our languages get used. We should develop policies and support those policies with regulatory conditions that ensure that whatever is said in our languages on the radio, on television, is stored and made available as contribution to big data, which is the fundamental nutrition for artificial intelligence.
There's another point here, which I am happy you are. Well, of course, like I mentioned earlier, we have today one of the biggest voice, around us in the areas of artificial intelligence and digital technology. So the question then is, what is data? You just mentioned that, of course, because in most cases these are reference points that people often get confused. People think of data as something staying somewhere or something that is, this is grammar. Oh, this is data. It's somewhere, But the way you are breaking it down, I'm happy because people don't know even the concept of data. Of course, in the local parlance, people think data is okay. You buy data for your internet.
That's facility for data transfer.
Yeah, of course. People think it's data, is you buy internet, that's data. Or in the research context, particularly in the local context, people think, okay, data is limited to the STEM, the technology, science and technology. In the social science, particularly humanities, people don't understand data as everyday life. People don't take it in that way. And when you mention it now, I'm happy because it is one of those important and core strategic areas that the technology itself that were imported has denied us of what we should know about ourselves. Because people think data is okay. And buying from Airtel to your phone, that is data. Or when thinking about data, they think about STEM, all those scientific word or whatever. The point is that from what we just mentioned, data is simply everyday life.
Data are the raw values that represent reality. Facts and figures that represent everyday reality. And because human interaction with the environment always reflects the type and the nature of the interaction. From the data, we can know what kind of interaction there was. The example I always give is when you saw a tree. The tree, you saw the tree, and you look down, you see rings. You see rings. You see rings. That's data. Because the rings reflect seasons of wet, availability of water, for the tree to grow fast, and the dry season in availability of water, and the tree is growing slowly. And then you see the dark areas, light areas, dark areas, light areas, in rings.
Yeah.
To the extent that if you count the number of rings, you see, it tells you the age of the tree.
Wow.
So, we must understand that, Yoruba says, "Tomi ba bale anipa." If water drops on the ground, there'll be a mark. And when you look at that mark, you know that somebody dropped water here. That is data. And if you understand how to transform data, you can turn the data into information.
And that's research. That is what
That is the whole. That's the whole basis of research.
Of research,
to
of course.
search again.
To
See what you did not see in the data before.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy again that we are doing this today. So data, in other words, is what we do everyday life. Our own stories, the way we construct our everyday life, exchanges, culture, performance, going to funeral, going to church, information that are produced, right, from these exchanges. Yeah. Definitely. This is just the beginning. Okay. One more question before we open the floor to our friends online and those around for to open the dialogue and conversation to them. The last one for today is, I think, still around the idea of digital technology or this idea of AI. Then you mentioned earlier that AI or technology, fine, but the concept of AI, I think I want us to also go deeper into it a bit, because what we are doing today is to lay the foundation. So by the time we come back next week, we can now be specific about fields here, and particularly within music, language, culture. So then how does AI, like you said this earlier, but I want us to flesh it out again and go back to it a bit. How do they respond to this everyday life? How do they help us to decode in one way or the other? Or how should we start thinking about AI in terms of everyday life?
Well, like I said before, AI is making computers behave intelligently.
Yeah.
A lot of the achievements we have as humans is based on the fact that we behaved intelligently. So, when we are now able to also make computers behave intelligently, it means we have the capacity to enhance what we are deriving based on intelligent behavior, because we are now widening the capacity for intelligent behavior. Part of the advantage that comes with AI is the fact that the human faculty has limitations. We have memory limitations, we have energy limitations. The memory of the computer is in several order of the memory of the human being. Computers don't get tired. We get tired. When we read, when we sit down, when we calculate, after some time, we start feeling some headache.
Yeah.
Computers don't. If they are heating up, you put a fan. So all these then become facilities that we can use to enhance our living. Now, it is not only in the Western world that people apply intelligence to their everyday living. Every human being in every culture of the world applies intelligence to their everyday living. What we need to do is to identify the elements of intelligence we apply to our everyday living and procure facilities to widen them using artificial intelligence. That implies that we need to go beyond users of technology to producers of technology.
Okay.
There is no German way of changing the gear of a BMW.
Okay.
There is no French way of depressing the accelerator of a Peugeot. There's no Swedish way of holding the steering of a Volvo. But the Yoruba language is not the same as the Igbo language. The Igbo language is not the same as Finnish language. Finnish language is not the same as Chinese. All these are areas in which we have to solve our own technological problems ourselves. And it means, therefore, we need to breed and develop the human manpower that will solve these problems for ourselves. Because we don't expect other people to solve it for us. Because these other people, no matter how well intentioned they are, they do not understand our circumstances like we do. They do not understand our languages like we do. They do not understand the nuances of our cultural realities like we do. So at the end of the day, it is our responsibilities to solve this problem. So, like I said earlier on, these are not subjects for technology transfer. They are subjects for technology development and addressing our own problems ourselves. I always say it. Every problem that technology solves is formulated by culture. Every question that technology answers is raised by culture. And each time you transfer technology, if that technology does not answer questions raised by your culture, and you want to retain the technology, what you usually do is to go and import the problem that technology solved elsewhere and put it and say, demonstrate, see, it's solving the problem.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So at this moment, our viewers, our friends, our colleagues online, I would like to open the floor, for further engagement, at least in the next 15, 20 minutes, in case you have questions, follow-up ideas or contributions. You are welcome to ask, but kindly raise your hand. Again, technology, using the emojis via your Zoom network. Thank you so much.